The most frightening words in the English language when they're used in unison together is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." If you notice over the last 100 so years, the problems of America have drastically increased. And with the problems increasing, our government intervention in these problems has only grown. But it doesn't seem like anything has helped anything. And I'm going to tell you here why, and I'm going to tell you how we should go about and do things differently. Just like all of you, I want this freedom, this experiment of freedom to work for all of us. And I believe that the only way that we can do that is go back to the principles in which were established by us, by our founding fathers in 1776. So we're going to look at 3 areas of overreach in which the federal government uses on us as people every day, and how we should go about doing it differently. So for starters, I got this from Thomas Sowell. In 2008, the housing crisis happened. In 1928, the stock market crashed, causing the Great Depression. And in times of crisis, people say that Congress should do more. Well, I charge that Congress should do less, and how actually by Congress acting hurts. And I got this from Thomas Sowell's book right here, Basic Economics. And if you don't listen to me, you don't think I know what I'm talking about, you need to listen to this guy. This guy knows what he's talking about. But for 40 years, the housing market in the United States was increasingly growing every single year. Not large numbers, but it was growing every single year, up until 2006. In 2006, it petered off a little bit. And then the federal government said, hey, we need to get more people to buy houses. So what they did is that they forced the banks, through regulations, to give out loans to people in which they normally wouldn't give out loans to because they knew they couldn't pay it. Bada boom, 2 years later, what happens? The whole housing market completely crashes. And it was a problem completely created by the federal government and the Congress doing more. Now back to 1928. Back in 1928, the stock market crashes. FDR is viewed as one of the most popular presidents, and majority of that has to do because he was president for about 50 billion years. I'm kidding, he only did 4 terms, he didn't finish his 4th. But he was president for a long time. He was president during the Great Depression, so he's viewed as he got us out of the Great Depression, and he was president during World War II. But a recent UCLA study found out that FDR actually increased the Great Depression and made it last longer by 7 years. By using massive government intervention and all of his programs, he made it last 7 years longer. Now, what he should have done, what Calvin Coolidge did back in the 20s when the United States was hit with an economic collapse, is nothing. You do nothing. It's hard because you're asking for a momentary moment of misery as opposed to making a quick fix and just elongating the problem. If you simply let the open markets heal themselves, that's what breeds competition. And competition is what basically capitalism is. Not corporatism. Don't get this mistaken, and we'll go into this in a little bit further. So I got this next part from Robert Peterson's book. So then, back to the 2008 housing market crash. So the housing market crashes, and then the Obama and Bush administrations create stimulus packages. What these stimulus packages do is it just hands out money to stimulate the economy, and the theory is that people are going to spend the money and go out and make purchases. Well, polls came back. It didn't stimulate anything, and the only thing that it did was increase inflation. It increased inflation, and it did nothing for the economy, and it just basically printed out fake money. So, and then the Obama administration, they went out, they bailed out the banks. Bailing out the banks, that is the definition of what corporatism is. A free market enterprise would have simply said, hey, you're the one that loaned out that money, and the government wouldn't have been the one to begin with forcing them to loan out that money. So a free market enterprise would have said, all right, hey, big banks, you're the ones that loaned out that money. If you can't pay it, sorry. And then what that would have done is that would have let the small banks, the ones that maybe you and some of your family members use in our local area. So the next thing I want to get into is taxation. Taxation, all you hear is tax the rich, the 1%, my best Bernie Sanders voice. The only group that benefits from large large taxing is big businesses, and large regulation is big businesses, because they're the only ones that can afford it. They're the only ones that can afford to pay all the payment that the federal government takes in. So, for example, the United States has a 40 to 38% corporate tax rate, which means that Walmart guy and Uncle Joe that runs a Domino's down the street has to pay 38 to 40% of his revenue to the federal government. So then what that means is that, okay, well, Bill, Bob, Joel, and Sue, I can't afford you anymore. So then on top of that, okay, well, now the federal government's going ahead and he's going to make minimum wage $15 an hour. So, okay, so I already paid 38 to 40% of my money just in taxes. So now I'm forced to pay at least 15% to everybody I work with. So I already fired so. Well, now I'm going to have to fire this person, or at least cut their hours down. And then before you know it, I have to go out of business. And there's the American experience for you. Alright, so it's really simple. In the last over 100 years, there have been 4 sitting U.S. presidents, and it doesn't really matter what you think about them. This is just facts, and I got this from Witten Emily and her review of Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics as well. Is the last 100 years, Calvin Coolidge, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, every single time someone has led to the decrease in taxes, it has increased in tax revenue. Meaning that if you give people more use of their money and can let them choose where it goes, then the more that is created. Because if you just take, you can't tax yourself into a successful economy. If that was the truth, then the Soviet Union would still be around. All right. So finally, the last thing that I want to get into, we got into the economics a little bit, we got into taxation a little bit. This is really deep subjects, and I'm just trying to go a little bit. But the inner city is the biggest thing that's been destroyed by big governments. All you have to look at is Detroit. If big government were to actually work, then Detroit would be an absolute utopian situation. With their high tax rates, the government's intermingling in with the union workers, all it has done is just absolutely destroyed. And they had the race riots back in the 60s and 50s, and they still haven't recovered from that. If they would have open market principles and let the best man or woman get the job, then I think they would be a lot successful off and not in the dire situation in which they're in today. Thank you very much.
I protect reality from the threat of invasion.